Heading up to the shopping centre, my wife wanted to check out a shop that she found there last time. Sells all these little cool things, a bit like an L-Hop, but not. Gadgets and torches and fans and little designer, little funky bags and stuff like that. And this Salinas del Carmen, I wanted to check out all of our old spots for different waders in the area. And on the way up, we passed this, I didn't see it to the last second, we passed this reservoir that looked mostly dry, but there was a bit of water in it. And there wasn't a place to park, so I had to sort of drive past it to look for a place to turn around. Luckily we did, because when I pulled over, I saw a raptor off to my left and marsh harrier. So on the list for bird seen, spun round, and luckily there was the ability to drive right alongside this reservoir. And because when I did look over, I did see some birds, so I knew to turn around and check. And immediately, about a dozen or so ruddy shelduck, and that number, as we sat there in the car using as a hide, built, and they were flying in. And dotted amongst them there were black-winged stilts. And I recognized this behavior from what I experienced in Hong Kong. And where else did I get it? It might have been when they're in the UK. Was it the UK? I think that might have been Avocet that did it. But anyway, I recognized the mating ritual where the female sort of goes flat like an ironing board and sort of points sort of a little bit down like that, and the male goes around and then goes up in the air, flying, hovers and lands on top of her. And I was correct, it did happen right in front of my eyes. Excellent, so that was a nice little touch. It's good that I'm learning this behavior and what to look for, because when you learn the bird behavior, you can preempt what's going to happen and get your camera set up ready for it. And yeah, there was a green shank, so the first green shank of the holiday. The last time I saw one of those here was in the Salinas del Carmen on the coast, which when we went up later, it wasn't there. There were actually no birds in the Salinas del Carmen except some Bertholot's pipits in the car park. And also in this pond, this reservoir area, my wife, being on point as per usual, I don't know, I might have checked them out. I don't know, I'm just going to say this and be upfront, whether she really noticed it and I wasn't going to check it. There were these white, what looked like painted rocks of all different shapes and sizes. I thought, well, they'd all be the same size and shape if they were birds. But she pointed out, and I thought, well, I'll check it. And I had to look for a second, and yeah, they were birds. I could see, I think it was 7 white birds, and the one that was preening was a little egret. So I thought, okay, little egret. But then I could just about make out the eyes of the ones which were sleeping, had their beaks tucked in, and I knew those were spoonbill for sure. And we waited, and eventually a couple every so often stuck their spoon out to have a little preen. So my wife spotted, I think it was 5 or 6 spoonbill, I forget now. And there was a grey heron amongst them as well, having a rest up on this mound. But just down here, I'll mention it because they were in the reservoir too. There was a flock of seagulls, which I've just had a look at in my camera, and it's definitely a mix of yellow-legged gulls, which have got the lighter grey back like a herring gull, and darker ones, so lesser black-backed gulls, making it very hard to determine sometimes with all the plumages and everything having yellow legs. Just before we got to the Salinas del Carmen, noticed this paved road going inland. Thought I'd just go and check it out, check out everything. And there was some sort of experiment, it was on a sign that was going on. It looked like on the map that there was some sort of reservoir there. And I couldn't see it from the road, but as I did go into this road that eventually goes off to the coast, I could see it was cordoned off, and it looked like it was just kind of plants in there. So whatever was in there, any kind of water has dried up, so there was nothing. And as we turned around, bang, a first vulture of the trip, the Egyptian vulture. So it was distant. I got a little bit of footage of it flying around just as just proof that I've seen it. But one day I should go all the way down this road, because I should check out every corner, nook and cranny of this island to see what's there. Because sometimes there's always a little surprise. You thought, if we'd have never come down here, we'd never have found this. Went back out onto the main road, and then another dead end coming up on the right before the Salinas del Carmen. we went down, and it was just some sort of excavation thing going on. And there was a kind of security gate. Okay, nothing down here. We tried, turn around, and I saw in the distance on the way back before we got to the road, 3 Egyptian vultures jumped up and started. So I was put my foot down and tried to get down level up to get as close to them before filming, and they were already off into some ravine, flying away. And I went, excellent. So we're starting to, things are starting to pick up now. And they made their way off into the distance. They didn't come any closer. So as freaked out about humans as they are in Menorca. And like I said, Salinas del Carmen, there was nothing there. Went to the shopping centre, and I arranged to meet up my wife later. We did a circuit of the golf courses opposite, which before I've had hoopoe in and ruddy shelduck, and there's been a mention of a green-winged teal, which would be a lifer for me, on the, I think it's the eBird, but the ponds which it's been seen on are right in the middle of the golf course, which I can't get into. So it must mean that the person that reported it's a golfer. So I didn't see it, and I could see I weren't going to see it from any angle. But in the past, they've also seen a grey shrike. Nothing there this time, except we did see some ruddy shelduck. And I'm not bothered about them now because I'm seeing them everywhere. So I've got my fill of ruddy shelduck. So when my wife went in to go shopping, I went out to the front. Now, there was a big fuss here a couple of years ago, and I missed it. But I didn't plan to come here for that. But just before getting to Fuerteventura, I did a checkup 2 years ago, and there was a random tropic bird in the shopping centre. It's like, what? And it was just by the ornamental pond outside. And I think I last saw it reported 2 days before I got there 2 years ago. And I went back about 3 times and hoping it would like show back up again, and it didn't. So I was fuming. It's like typical. And I went out there again. I had this little idea that it would come back on the day I come back 2 years later, and it didn't. But it was a big thing back then. And it's still on the Bird Guides app. If you scroll down, not many records are kept on Bird Guides for Fuerteventura, but there are a few bits and pieces, but it's there. Had a look around the pool, and I saw a common sandpiper fly across and go and stand near some people. So I thought, okay, it's not going to be too jumpy. So I went round to get as close as I could to it, and got very close. I was able to feel the friends, the closest I've ever got to a common sandpiper. And it eventually hunkered down in the soil and filmed it there for a second. And then I flicked over to my, as it was so close, to see how close I could get with the 4K crop. And when you're in at like 1.8 crop factor with the image stabilizer, you can see it bouncing like the old Pong game. Couldn't hold it still. It was too windy I did have my tripod, but it was just too windy to even waste my time putting it on the tripod. But I'll include a little bit just so you can see how close we were getting. You see all the feather detail was incredible. You know, because usually when people get common sandpipers, they're, you know, miles, they're a little dot, and it's like, is it a common sandpiper? Is it something else? But that was awesome. That was kind of like a little booby prize for not getting the tropic bird. And then out on the front, in the past, I've had really good luck with waders. Once the tide starts going out, you get all these waders start coming in. So first of all, I started seeing common ring plover. Well, 1 or 2 came in, they flew in and they spread out, about 6 of them. And then I walked around to this, there's a dedicated walkway that goes out, which is very slippy. I nearly went over, so be careful when you go out there. I was only in my flip-flops. Walked out there to get closer to one of the plovers that was on a rock, and got some closer footage of it because it was a bit windy. Then I saw a white bird slip in behind my back out the corner of my eye. And it was a sanderling. I've seen them there before. And filmed that moving in amongst the plover. Next up, a flock of turnstones started coming in. And then turned my back and then back again, and suddenly there were, I think, 5 sanderlings. Little egret, I think there were 2 of them moving around the beach. In the past, I've had grey plover. Show you the photo. And got it flying. And whimbrel. I haven't seen any whimbrel yet. Now, when I first came to Fuerteventura. I got them in Corralejo. We're not going up there. Oh, the ground squirrels. Somebody's feeding them. Who's feeding them? No. So yeah, I haven't seen any wimbrel yet, which is surprising. And I've been to a few wader hotspots. No Salinas del Carmen, none at the shopping centre, very weird. Making our way home, I took one of the side roads off of the main road to go back slower, where there wouldn't be anyone behind us and no fences, so if we needed to pull over, we could. And it kind of, I'm always looking for the African Hubara and the coursers, hoping they'll just pop out in front of me at some point. But I'll take anything else. And it was the right decision. It was a brilliant decision, because we were driving down this road, and it was pylons going down the left side, and I could immediately see this big object on the top. I mean, even though I didn't have a real sense of perspective, I could see this was a huge bird, raptor, almost certainly a vulture. And I videoed it from the distance just to make sure before it flew off, and I couldn't prove it. It stood still, made my way closer in the car to the point that I was pulled up next to it, and I could feel the frame with my 800mm. And it was a juvenile, I assume, darker Egyptian vulture. And as I looked off to my, in front, the next two pylons also had birds on top of. So I filmed this, I got as much as I could from this angle of the juvenile. And as I moved down to the next pylon, it took off, and I could see white and yellow, so it was an adult, and they're way more jumpy. So, okay, and I filmed that for a little bit flying, and in the harsh sunlight, never great quality. But as it was flying around, I just glanced around the local area to see what else was going on, and I think there was some sort of farm on my right, on the right side of the road. And immediately on the top of these tree stumps, I could see juveniles in various plumages, and they weren't moving. Got the camera out, I got out the car. Initially I filmed it through the window to make sure I didn't scare them. And once I got a little bit of film, I thought, okay, now we can move on, get out the car, risk, seeing how jumpy they are with my presence. So got out the car and used the top to steady myself, because there was a bit of wind, and they sat still, perfectly still. So I just thought, this is blinding. There must be, what, 5 or 6 now. And I found their stronghold. Just wow, just what a great decision to come down this road. And then I just saw a couple flying in different plumages. So you got the white ones with the yellow, the adults, and then, in various plumages. So you had all these bits of black on some of them. Brilliant. I mean, this lens isn't great for flight photography, videography, sorry. The image stabilizer fights. When you're tracking to the right, the lens thinks that, oh no, you're trying to stay still. So fights you and tries to put the image back to the left, and you get this jittery. So you're basically only working with about 2 or 3 seconds of footage. You have to chop that together, slow down from 60 frames a second to 30 frames. That's the only way around it. So there's lots of chopped up footage. You never get this perfectly clean, raptor going around in circles, lovely and clean. And I have noticed this with professional videographers on the BBC Springwatch and stuff like that. They never get clean moving footage. It's always slowed down for the simple reason is cameras do fight you, especially with image stabilizers. And people say, well, turn it off. Yeah, but when you're at 1,000mm, the slightest little movement with no image stabilizer is going to be really, really choppy. So maybe one day they'll improve that. Like they've given you eye tracking. Maybe they'll say, tracking for birds. So it will switch off certain elements, like going horizontally. They'll switch that. They do that on the older lenses, but on this RF lens it doesn't. My old 150 to 600 had that, where you could turn on the image stabilizer for vertical and turn off for tracking horizontal. This one doesn't give you the option. It only has image stabilizer for all directions, annoyingly. One of the downsides to this lens, but I can't give up the reach. This lens the reach alone is worth keeping. I've spoken to people who have 500mm prime and 600mm prime, and once they get this, the primes rarely go on because the reach is just unbeatable. Even when you've cropped a prime, it still doesn't look good as an 800mm. So as I was leaving and on the way back to the hotel, there was a swirl of maybe a dozen or 15 vultures going around in a vortex between me and the sun. It looked spectacular, but I couldn't film it. I maybe got 4 in the frame at the same time. But what I'll do is I'll see if I can go by that road and see if they're there again, because it could be one of those things. There's a lot of times when you think, oh, I found the location of this group of birds or whatever, and you go back and they're not there. It was just lucky they were passing as you were passing. Then just to round it off, at the roundabout at the end of this road, this kestrel, which I think I've learned is a canary subspecies, landed on the post I left and got me the closest kestrel footage I've had since I've been here. And got the full body, and then got in closer, as close as my lens would allow, in the windy conditions. The birthrock pipits are everywhere, so they were jumping around at the side of the road, and I was getting a couple of seconds, because they do that thing, like I said, where they stop, run, stop, run. So bits and pieces here and there. Sometimes they'd stand on the top of a rock for 5 seconds, and you get a bit better footage. And then the final little touch was just heard the call of the spectacled warbler, and there was one in the distance on a bush. I could see it darting around. So that was a great day. I mean, even though it was technically only a half day, because it was an off day, we just accomplished so much. So, I mean, the vultures alone, that was brilliant.